I don't think we should be focusing on Loki. That guy's brain is a bag full of cats. You could smell crazy on him.
Have care how you speak. Loki is beyond reason, but he is of Asgard. And he is my brother.
He killed 80 people in 2 days.
He's adopted.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. We're on episode 5 of Loki, the penultimate episode. We got one episode left to finish the story. And last week I thought was the best episode so far, and I felt like this might have been the weakest. And here with me to talk about that is my good friend, comic writer Aaron Sparrow. How you doing, Aaron?
This is fantastic. I actually enjoyed this episode. So we're gonna be maybe a little bit at odds. There's probably things that we'll agree on, but we might be at odds in our overall feeling about it.
Perfect. People like it when we don't get along on these things, and I don't mind that you having a difference of opinion here. I think that my overall take here, now that we're coming down to the stretch run, are a couple of overlying issues. This is a love story. I think that's, when we're getting to the end, we're figuring out that this is overall, it's a love story that we're getting taken on. I just don't see the chemistry between the two Lokis. I think it's interesting that you could have Loki fall in love with the female version of himself. It feels like it's very in character, but the two personalities just aren't popping as far as Loki and Sylvie for me.
It's interesting the way that they're portraying Sylvie, because sometimes she seems really demure, and then other times she seems really brash, and it's hard to get a handle on what her character is. She's not Loki in the sense that she's not Tom Hiddleston Loki, which would have been interesting to see him actually in a confrontation with somebody that is exactly the same as him, and then falling in love with himself would have been, hilarious, because that's the ultimate narcissism, is, he's falling in love with himself. I do think they had a nice moment in this that made me like Sylvie more. But I feel like that those moments should have come much earlier, or this show should be much longer. I mean, we're at the penultimate episode, and there's still a lot of things that haven't been answered that they've got to wrap up in the last episode, and there's a lot of things that go unexplained. So there are some definite, although I enjoyed it, there are some definite flaws.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that go unexplained. I remember when she dropped all those time bombs in the first or second episode, and everything was going to hell. What happened with that? I thought it was going to be a major plot point. They've never spoken of it again.
And what was it? Yeah, it turns out was it just a distraction to get her into the TVA? That seems like a lot of destruction wrought.
They made it seem like the fabric of time might have been being torn apart, and this was a major event that maybe they've never dealt with before, and is kind of brushed aside. I'm like, feels like that should have been addressed at some point. And here's the other thing, Aaron, that I think is holding the series back. I remember watching the Netflix MCU, well, not MCU, but Marvel stuff on Netflix. It felt different. So therefore, it was kind of exciting. We got the MCU stuff on the big screen, and you can go watch this really cool, down and dirty, gritty Daredevil story, and it had a different feel to it. And this feels MCU light. Maybe that's why some people enjoyed the WandaVision series more, because it took a different approach. But it feels like the MCU without the bells and whistles, with the cheaper set designs and less cool CGI.
Well, this is largely a watered down Doctor Who and Hitchhiker's Guide of the Galaxy for dummies. I think the idea of this show, I think it's being made by Loki fangirls for Loki fangirls. So maybe you and I aren't the target audience. I do think that this episode did deliver more fun for me than any of the previous episodes. You can definitely tell this is the episode where they spent the money. The bits with alligator Loki, which I thought I would hate when they first introduced him. I was like, I like the alligator Loki, but I'm sure that it's going to be, something that's going to be cutesy and cringe. I actually ended up really liking. I liked the confrontation with President Loki. I wanted more of that. I wanted more of Richard Grant's old Loki.
Yes, those are the good parts. So many things. They got weird and started doing stupid stuff.
Yeah, when it gets weird and wacky and goofy and like all these, timelines, and the fact that all the Lokis betray each other was fantastic. Like there were things like that I really, really enjoyed. And it made me realize that this is what I wanted the entire show to be. You know, I wanted there to be a serious threat, but I also wanted there to be just a lot of wacky, over the top, multiversal hijinks. And so this episode delivered on that for me. But again, I don't know how this is all going to wrap up and how the whole show is, once it's all said and done, how all 6 episodes are going to fit together cohesively into a narrative, and whether or not I'm going to ultimately enjoy where that took me.
Yeah, I mean, I almost got reminded here of what I was hoping for the whole time, and then you get this weird stuff that's going on. You're like, okay, finally they tried to deliver a laugh, and I chuckled a little bit. This is kind of what I was hoping for the whole time. And then you go right back to this weird, uncomfortable relationship. Loki is fully aware that he's in love with himself. Mobius has pointed that out. Mobius has clearly pointed out to Sylvie that Loki's in love with her, and that's what he was going to say before he got pruned. But they're still really uncomfortable, and like, here, can I share a blanket with you? It's like, what are you, 12? I guess I understand that he might be, emotionally stunted just by his personality a little bit.
And he's got a fear of opening himself up. It's really hard for him. I think that was a good character moment, because I think the awkwardness kind of worked, and I think it kind of underlies what they tried to do with revealing.
I think it just makes the show feel really long and boring.
See, I liked the scene between them with the blanket. I thought that was kind of, it felt kind of natural. Like, it felt like two people.
It was the worst scene until the very last one.
Oh, see, now I disagree with you. I think that I think that it worked, and it worked for me, and it made me like Sylvie more, because it made me realize that, despite her,
it made me like the director less.
Well, I think the director tried some things in this episode. Like, there's the upside down shot that opens it, where we pan to the elevator door, and then we could just kind of get a recap of the severed head of the fake timekeeper. There were some shots like that where it was like she was trying to be a real director, but it didn't serve anything, because it was just a bunch of lifeless shots of scenery. So it kind of didn't really, and then it kind of faded into the destroyed, the destroyed city, and you're like the timeline where everything's just kind of jumbled together, almost like a battle world. Because at one point I was like, well, is that the records of Avengers Tower? And then like later you see like the Golden Gate Bridge, and I was like, oh, so is Mobius in a different place? And then I realized, oh no, it's just a jumble. It's a jumble of everything all together that's just being layered over the top of each other, and that's why there's subway cars that are up out of the, not in the subway, but just on the surface. And I was like, oh, okay, so this was good. I liked that. I think that once we got to that stuff, I thought the direction got better.
So the opening just threw me for a loop. It was like, we've been watching this story, we've got over 3 hours of view time in here. And I'm supposed to believe that Sylvie, who seems to be one of the most untrusting, cynical characters in the entire MCU, is just going to all of a sudden believe Ravonna, that she feels like she's been screwed too, even though she just killed Loki and Mobius for knowing the truth, and then she's going to go along with her plan. I'm like, no one's this stupid. Not even Sylvie.
That was one of those Ryan George moments. Why is this happening? Oh, because I wrote it down in the script. It doesn't spin out of any of the characterization of Sylvie. It's just, we need this moment to happen because we feel like this is writing. And it really wasn't. Sylvie never should have trusted Ravonna.
Ravonna's like, you got to trust me. I'm like, please, are you kidding me? You just murdered 2 people to hide this entire secret. She knows that.
Yeah, and even like, even if you thought to yourself like, well, she broke and she was, like disillusioned, that's why she was like, just do it, like just kill me at the end of the last episode, which would have made more sense for her character if she actually was broken. I just don't buy Ravonna at all. I don't buy any of her character motivation. I don't buy her switching back and forth. She wants to find out who's really behind it.
I thought she was Kang.
You had the perfect opportunity to find out who was really behind it when you had Sylvie with you. But instead, you
had an entire army of people that were very powerful to look at for it. I thought she was Kang, but judging by the very end, the fact that she's still saying when no one's around that she doesn't know who the timekeepers are, okay, she's not Kang, I guess. But I just didn't buy that opening.
Is
then
Kang
we
the
get
timekeeper?
I'm assuming he's the one that's behind it all, right?
But then that sets up the whole problem that people had with expecting Mephisto to be in WandaVision, is that you're going to get to the last episode, and if you just bring in a random villain, who cares? So it's kind of got to, I don't know where they're going to go. Who's the villain going to be? What's the reveal? Are they going to do something surprising? And is that surprise going to be satisfying? I don't know. And by the end of this episode, by the way, none of these episodes have ended on a cliffhanger that is good. Like them just walking into the city or walking to, like, the clouds clear and they're walking towards it. That's not an interesting cliffhanger.
No, well, let's talk about this monster that we get. That they get into the void and he meets the other Lokis and he's starting to get the lay of the land. And there's this big monster. Why do they keep bringing back smoke monsters? It worked in the Never-Ending Story. It's the only time I think I've seen it work. It didn't work in Lost. It didn't work in, Fantastic Four. These stupid smoke monsters are not intimidating.
Lantern.
They do not. They don't create tension or anything. And it's like, oh, that's Goliath. At first, I thought they said Goliath. I was like, oh my god, they made Goliath a smoke monster. No, it's Goliath. And you're like, oh, cool, a big swirling mass of smoke with a face.
This would have been a perfect opportunity for the Midgard serpent, Fafnir, any other character from the comic mythologies. They could have brought that in, but instead they invented a big smoke snake. It was just a MacGuffin. It's just one of those, it's just an obstacle in the way. But still, you can lean into the ridiculousness and make these things cool, make these things interesting and larger.
Make it another Loki variant that they've decided to keep everybody in there. Wouldn't that be more interesting?
Loki as the Midgard serpent. I would have liked that.
You know what I mean?
Cool.
Another weird Loki that you have to overcome.
You got a Throg cameo. What more do you want from this episode, Wes?
Well, we did. He was in the jar. I saw that when it was next to Mjolnir. That was buried under there.
That's one of those teases that makes you go, oh, I wish we were getting this.
I wish it was more.
Remember in X-Men 2 when Colossus, armors up and helps fight off Stryker's men? And then he says to Wolverine, I can help you. And Wolverine's like, help them. And the whole audience, everybody in the theater went, oh. Like, you're just writing him out. You teased him, but you're just writing him out because you don't have anything for him to do. Throg would have been fun. The fact that there's no Thors in this, is kind of a bummer. Obviously maybe you can't get Chris Hemsworth to come in for this little Disney Plus show. But, maybe he's too busy. But, you could have got a version of Thor.
Yeah. Old man Thor or something. You can do something fun with it. But the fun parts are fun. That's the good part, Aaron. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes everything around it, to me, disappointing. Is like, why does this have to be this stupid love story? It didn't work out in Thor between Thor and Jane Foster. That their romance was a wet fish, and I feel like I'm getting more of that here.
I was a little more. I was a little more invested in this than I was Jane and Thor, because I see these two characters as being very broken, and that's why they can't admit to each other the way that they feel. And I do think that Sylvie has feelings for Loki. And I thought that was kind of. I thought it was very subtle. I thought it was very subtly done with the whole blanket scene. I actually liked it. I think that you can build on that. The problem is I'm
You're
viewing
the last episode.
Yeah, I'm viewing this episode as a bottle episode of just like, did I enjoy this episode? Yes, I had fun with it. It was probably the most fun I've had watching the show so far. Overall, do I think that this is all going to work together and deliver something great by the end? I don't think that, because I don't think there's enough time. I don't think there were enough episodes, and I don't think that they have handled it deftly enough to deliver a satisfying conclusion. I hope I'm wrong, and if I am wrong, I will admit it. But this is the way that I feel right now. I enjoyed this episode just in and of itself, but fitting into the overall narrative, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work out. I wanted more of this throughout the whole show.
Yeah, exactly. This should have been episode 2 or something, and then you get into this weird adventure where Loki, maybe a couple other Lokis or someone that's coming up with, hopefully it's Mobius, kind of gets their way out of this, but you're having this fun stuff, and it kind of dies. And we got to talk about this last scene, which I thought was, ugh. I like the end of Twister as much as anybody, but this just didn't work. And I'm going to enchant, this cloud, and the only way we can enchant it is by showing people that we love each other, and they're like trying to hold hands and like touch the cloud or whatever. And there's something interesting going on. You've got old school Loki like making buildings and screaming and having all kinds of fun and everything, and it's like, stop cutting back to these two, stay on him, and that's cool.
Richard Grant is so good. Like I can't remember any movie I've ever seen Richard Grant in where I didn't just absolutely love his performance. He is the best part of Hudson Hawk. If you've never seen that movie.
I've seen it.
I know you have. I know you have. But if it's one of those movies that I saw in theaters and I hated when I saw it. And then when it came out on video, I watched it again. And then I was like, oh, maybe I just wasn't in the right mood for this. I kind of like, I didn't know what I was getting into. And now I kind of know what it is and I'm appreciating it for what it is.
It's definitely, what's the one where he's a cop and one of the Wayans brothers is a football player?
Is that the last
He's
Boy
a quarterback?
Scout? Yeah.
The last Boy Scout. It's no Last Boy Scout, let's put it that way, but it's still good. Love that movie.
So yeah, Richard Grant is great as old Loki, and it kind of makes me wish that we'd get an old Loki spin-off because that would be fantastic. This episode did deliver the only laugh I've had in the entire series.
Definitely.
A few smirks, but when President Loki pulls Alligator Loki off his hand, and then his hand is gone, and it takes him a split second to realize it, and then he starts screaming. I thought that was really good. That amused me, and it was all because of the way Tom Hiddleston sold it.
Yeah, so we know what they're in. They're in the void. At the end, the cloud is greed, and they've subdued the monster, so they can find out where the TVA began, which apparently is what Ravonna is doing on the other side, going back to all the files and whatnot.
The problem with Ravonna's plotline is that I don't care. I'm not invested in her character. She's not likable. There's nothing about her that makes me sympathetic towards her in any way. Just the fact that she is another variant that's been taken advantage of, it seems, is not enough to make me care about her character because she hasn't shown anything redeemable. She's still just basically a stooge. She turns on Sylvie, who at that point, she could have used her to help her find out what was really going on, but instead she
exactly at the end they're like, well, I need to know. It's like, why are you killing all these people that are doing the same thing then?
Mm-hmm.
It makes no sense.
And I can't imagine that there's going to be an explanation in the final episode that's going to make it make sense.
Nah, I don't. I mean, listen, I think Tom Hiddleston has done the best that he can to prop up, which I think has been poor writing and poor directing. And there are some fun moments in here, but it's hard to he's dragging this thing to the finish line by himself. It feels like.
I mean, I realize not everybody can come in and be the Russo brothers on these things, but you could have. I mean, man, just comparing this to like the first season of Daredevil. Obviously, they're very different shows, but just from a quality storytelling perspective, completely different. And the direction.
Christos Gage wrote the first season of Daredevil. He still works for Marvel.
Oh, there you go. See, I love Christos.
Just have him stop filling in for Dan Slott.
Yeah, coming in and doing.
I believe it was Christos Gage and his wife wrote the first season of Daredevil. It was fantastic. Yeah,
no, it was really good. And actually, Christos Gage, if I can just take an aside here, he is the only person at Marvel. Like I had a friend who was an editor at Marvel during the whole Civil War thing, and he said that the big problem was every writer, because they're all Democrats, all wanted their characters in their books to be on Captain America's side, because they saw Civil War as a commentary on the Patriot Act, and that was Bush, so they were going to be against Bush. And he basically told them, God damn it, you're supposed to be writers. This is who they are on Iron Man's side. Come up with a reason based on who the characters are that they would follow Iron Man. And it wasn't until Christos, and I was, big on Cap's side because, I'm a Cap guy and I believe in less government control. I want the government out of my life as much as possible. So, I was big on Cap's side, but Christos Gage wrote a story where Cap and Iron Man confront each other, and Iron Man explains his side of things. And it was the only time during Civil War that I said, I still don't agree, but I understand. And because Christos Gage took the time to delve into Tony Stark's personal history and give the reasons why, based on his experiences, that he was taking this stance. And I understood it, and I was like, okay, and it made the story so much more interesting and so much more complex for me. And that is the difference between a guy like Christos Gage, who is a writer, and people who are just ideologues pumping their ideas into these characters in these books where they don't belong.
Yeah,
you got to be able to write things. You got to be able to write things that you don't believe.
Yeah, because you're writing from the perspective of the character. The character isn't you.
Yes. And
they have different motivations and different
somebody
points
like
of view.
Christos Gage on these Disney Plus shows, and you're going to do a lot better than we're getting.
Yeah, and plus he has, a little bit of reverence for the history of the characters and stuff. And I think that's why that first season of Daredevil is, it's essentially the bar. If you want to make, a superhero streaming show, the first season of Daredevil is the apex right now. You have to climb that if you want to get to the top, and nobody has yet.
Nope, nobody's gotten there, and I don't think we're going to get it out of the current MCU. There's a lot of I'm seeing a lot of articles and a lot of people talking about how the MCU is kind of over with Endgame, for them, and I think that's the struggle that Kevin Feige is facing is not only the fact that the story that everybody was invested in is wrapped, the characters that people were most invested in are gone, and now we're getting things like Shang-Chi, which I think it looks interesting. I don't know that I'll pay to see it, but I think it does look interesting. And then Eternals, which is the worst looking Marvel movie. I think that at least the trailer is the worst trailer that they've ever released for anything.
Well, and you got Jon Favreau, the guiding voice behind Iron Man, at least the director, writer of those movies. He's moved on. He's a Star Wars guy now.
Yeah.
They've lost a lot of the talent. You had Kenneth Branagh doing the original Thor movie. That thing was great.
Except for the the constant Dutch angles, it was fantastic. I loved it.
I thought that was one of the underrated MCU films, in my opinion. So you got all this new wave of talent, and I don't think Kevin Feige has been as discerning as before in making sure that he's getting the right voices for the right characters. I think he's trying to find I don't know, the voices that people want him to be a part of the MCU. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. I think that obviously there's there's a lot of talented female directors out there that you can pull in that don't get their due in Hollywood. I just don't know that Kate Herron had the experience to take on something like this. She's doing an adequate job. I don't want to undercut her what she's doing on the show and make it seem like I think that it's horrible. I don't. I just think that it's average. And I think that the MCU needs to not be average, to keep this momentum going and to keep being the cash cow that obviously Disney wants it to be. You've just got to bring in the top talent. Now, you can bring in female directors, but you've got to bring in the best female directors. It still has to be based on merit. You can say like, hey, we want to diversify a little bit, but who's the best of the best? And that's what we need to get. It can't just be someone who's okay or good enough.
Yeah, kind of feels like that's what's going on. So me personally, I think it's the weakest episode. I had the most fun. There were moments in here that were great and are exactly what I wanted out of this, but it's kind of all wrapped in a bunch of of nothingness that a bunch of relationships that I'm just not invested in. They don't feel all that well developed, or the chemistry doesn't feel right to me. I'm giving this one a 2-star. I know you are more happy, more pleased with the outcome of this episode.
Just the fact that it introduced a sense of fun, which is what I wanted from the series, went a long way with me. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. But the show itself is kind of hovering around a 2.5 to a 3. So we'll see how they whether or not they can stick the landing and really like make the whole thing worth it.
Well, obviously, we will be back here next week for the final episode. Thank you very much, Aaron Sparrow. Do you have any final words about Loki episode 5 or anything about this season so far?
I would watch more alligator Loki. Actually, no. You know what? I don't want that because it'll get ruined. It'll get ruined. It's just it was the right amount. It was the right amount of silliness and fun, and I absolutely want it. You know what I want more of? I want more of Richard Grant Loki. That's what I want. He was having a good time, and he was having a good time, and conversely, so was I.